Chapter 11 is in regards to politics and the economy. When we're looking at politics and the economy, we look at from politics sides in regards to the authority of malignant violence, the traditional authority, the rational legal authority, and the charismatic authority, and the transfer of authority. Um, a lot of this kind of goes into what's currently happening in 2020. Um, with in regards to our power of authority in regards to our president elections and all that good stuff. So if you follow politics, this will kind of all fall in line. If you don't follow politics, and everything that you're hearing might help out in regards to what is going on. Um, when you're looking at um, authority, when you're looking at the alignment of violence of type of authority, you have different types of powers that kind of play. When you're looking at politics, it's just an exercise of power, leadership influences, and the authority in regards to those individuals. So when you're looking at a authority person, you are looking at a person who has power that people consider rightly exercised over them is known as authority. So when you're looking at the authority of a ligament of violence, you're looking at the state, the right to use violence, and the right to punish everyone else who uses violence. So it's a monopoly of violence. It's a violence of political order. So when you're looking at this, there's a lot that kind of lays in regards to the authority of the alignment of violence. Um, there's aspects in regards to um, the ultimate foundation of the political order. This is like you could have the right to kill on the streets. All of that aspects kind of takes into place. When you're looking at traditional authority, traditional authority is for centuries, in certain countries, if you were a widower, you were expected to stay a widower. You weren't expected to remarry. Showing here, these are women in Italy and more of the Mediterranean countries. In Italy, who were expected to dress in black and mourn for their husbands for the rest of their lives. Um, it's not that way as much anymore, but these are traditional authorities. It's what it was expected of them to kind of live like. They were expected to follow those rules because it was custom. They weren't expected to remarry. Those customs have now changed. Obviously over time, you can't expect if someone's husband passed away in their 20s, and to expect them to mourn for the rest of their lives. Now it's not looked upon in regards to as a bad custom that you don't mourn and dress in black all the time. But if you had an older generation, you might see women, if you've ever go like visit Italy or more of the Mediterranean, maybe Greece or that type of aspects, you might see women dress like this. That's because their husbands passed away and they're still mourning and they'll continue to mourn because they're following those traditional authorities. When you're looking at rationale legal, these are reasonable laws. They're written, agreed upon, and there's a Baradic authority. So there's a hierarchy. There's all of that kind of plays in place. They come with positive. Um, they come from a person who holds those positions from a positive aspects. Um, they don't um, try to look at the individual's personality aspects. They just look at it as how do they hold themselves in as in one. When you're looking at charismatic authority, these are individuals. The best example for a charismatic authority is Joan of Arc. If you've never heard her, she was a teenager who changed the history of France. The engraving is from the 1800s, showing her little Orleans of the British in the 1429s. She was a young individual who had this charismatic authority, basically a authority based on individuals' outstanding traits, which attracted followers. So the way how she spoke, the way how she acted, was able to have this aspects in regards to people wanting to follow her. Same thing when it comes to Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was also a charismatic authority. He's also one that has those um, authorities in regards to getting people to follow him. So this would be more of a um, threat posed to. are charismatic. You have a positive and you have a threat. This would be more of a threat, where she was more as a positive, Joan of Arc. Um, but Adolf Hitler, attracted, people in regards to trying to portray what was considered the true D, excuse me, by showing an individual on who should be the real Germans, that type of aspects. If you had a certain look, if you had a certain, characteristics, or if you had certain things, then, you know, he was able to convince people to, get him to follow him just by the way how he spoke. So those are charismatic authorities. You can kind of see how they're a little bit different in regards to their demeanors. When you're looking at transfer of authority, these are orderly transfers of authority from one leader to another. We have an election for a purpose. It's, to transfer from one leader to the other. The transition of one type of authority to another type of authority, not everybody's going to have the same thought process. However, in our situation, in our government, we also have our checks and balances to make sure that we have, not one person having too much control. And then you have the routinization of the charismata. So those are those transfers of authority from one charismatic figure to either a traditional or to a rational legal form of authority. So when you're talking about this last one, that's what it is. Um, we have different types. We have monarchies, we have democracies, and we have dictatorships or oligarchies. When you're looking at these types of aspects, it really depends in regards to the power in which radiates outward type aspects. If you're looking more in regards to monarchies, these were city states, kings and queens. Think of more of the medieval time era. Um, you had your castle in the middle. You had all your, civilians on the outside. And what you try to do is, in order to gain regions through war, you stepped up your people. You went to war to expand your kingdom. So those are called city states. These are monarchies, which is just basically a form of government headed by a king and queen. Okay. Um, so the other aspects is that underneath the city state, it's the power of which radiates outward to the adjacent areas that have come under the ruling. So, like I mentioned, it's through the gain of war. Democracy, these are global social movements. People all over the world earn for their freedoms. They that are taken for granted in the Western democracies. Kind of, here shown here are tribesmen voting. In the Philippines, if you notice, it says tribesmen, not tribeswomen. Um, it's one of those situations to where democracies is one of those. Everybody has a freedom to speak. Everybody has a freedom to vote however they want. Um, Revolutionary ideal, it's one of those aspects. In the early United States, it was only all white men who voted who owned property. It's changed over the time. It's now, pretty much everybody has the right to vote. It's not one class, it's not one individual, gender that's able to vote anymore. However, the Philippines is still only men. It's not women as well. But like I mentioned, in the early United States, only all white men who own property are the ones who voted. So it was one of those aspects to it wasn't um, open like it is currently. Dictatorship. This is basically the seizure of power, individual or a small group. Individual would be more of the dictatorship. A small group is the oligarchs. Sorry. Um, the varying control. And when you look at varying control, you have total totalitarianism. And this is just basically in regards to understanding in regards to a form of government that exerts almost total control over people. That's your total. When you're looking at dictatorship, it's a form of government in which an individual has seized power. And like I said, is this one's a form of government that a small group or an individual holds power. They rule or the many by a few type aspects. Um, so there's a lot in regards to the different type of leaderships. When we're looking at different type of leaderships in the U.S., you get a political system. We have political parties, we have the elections, we have contrasts of a democratic system in the European, we have voting patterns, and then in order to gain those votes for, push certain things, the propositions or, for each state, each county, each, city, you have different things. Those are lobbyists and special interest groups that kind of help with all those to kind of push them. If you, during this election, if you got text messages like, hey, this is so and so, vote for prop whatever, or, can we count on your, those are lobbyist people and special interest groups. They're volunteers, they're trying to push whatever they can. However, they're also trying to raise money on certain aspects too. But when we're looking at political parties, we have Republicans and Democrats. These represent slightly different slices of the center. When we're looking at slices of the center, we have these two parties that um, arouse extreme loyalties and emotions patterns by both parties, right? As we see what's going on, we've seen a lot of these states flip blue, blue, blue to red, red to blue, back and forth. These are just, kind of the way how the patterns is show the way how people vote. These are the call those electrical, or the not the electrical, the um the electoral votes. I mean, there we go. These are the ones that, kind of predict the way how everybody's voting. Well, when, if you guys follow the politics over this election, you've seen like it could be as simple as a county that could flip this from red to blue. Um, it's just one of those things. However, this is what's part of the slightly different slices of the center. These could change. They're not always permanent one way or the other. So these are like polling predictions and stuff like that. When you're looking at polling predictions in 2016, they predicted who? They predicted Hillary Clinton to win, as she had the popular vote. However, when um, all of the electoral votes got, put in, Trump ended up winning. So you have a little different aspects. Currently there's still states that are still counting their ballots now. However, have they already called the electoral, president? Yes, they have already for 2021. But it's one of those situations to where you could kind of see how certain states could have more power than others when it comes to making more of that Democrat sees of, decisions. And but that's what's nice about giving us the right to vote in regards to however we want. It's that slightly different slices of the centers. It's just slightly difference of opinions. That's all it is. So like I said, polling predictions, even many Trump supporters were surprised that he won in 2016. um how could they've gotten wrong? It's because they didn't wait until all the votes were counted. It's like one of those situations. um it's just the way how many elections results finalize. It's just the aspects of that type of thing. Typical voting patterns when we're looking at age, when we're looking at gender, when we're looking at class, they all tend to change through the years. Americans who voted from 1988 to 2016, you can kind of see an increase. From 2016 to 2020, you're going to see another increase. A lot more people came out this year to come out and vote. But if you can kind of see where's the normal age range that people tend to vote at, and that's in between the 35 and 65. There's 60, 65, 68% that from like age 35 and up. And I would ask this question, and I want you guys to kind of think about this question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think someone in the age of 35 and older is it more likely to vote? And as you guys are thinking about that, I'll kind of put in the reasons why. They're usually already in the career paths. They have a little bit more to lose. They have a little bit more opinion. It could be education, it could be career, it could be money, it could be class. There could be a lot of things going on here. But usually, someone at the age of 35 has already completed their education. And so therefore, you might have a little bit more of a higher bracket in regards to understanding, in regards to having wanting to say. 25 to 34, they're increasing. This year, I've seen a lot more individuals in between the 18 to 34 be more involved in the election, more interested in what was going on, more of the aspects of asking questions like why and how come. So it's nice to see the younger generation to, kind of stepping up. Like I said, I see these as in for 2020, next time that we do our statistics polls and stuff like that, I see all of this as a high because more people were more interested in regards to doing, taking and having their voice heard and being spoken for, and wanted to, try to do a change. Um, Males to females, same thing. Females tend to vote more than males. Um, and that's just in regards to the aspects of, maybe more free time. Men tend to work, not be able to get away from work as easy. So that could be the other issue is there. And then when you're looking at race and ethnicity, you can see that whites and African Americans, Asians are, and Latinos, but your whites and African Americans are more of your higher percentage in polling, and then Asian Americans and Latinos. But once again, 2020, I expect all of this to change. When you're looking at education, usually with some college or college graduate, well, those are the ones that tend to vote a little bit more. Married couples tend to vote a little bit more. Employed people tend to vote more. And it would kind of think of the question as into why this is. Why one versus the other? When you're looking at income, you can see usually the ones that are on the higher end of income have more tendencies to vote versus somebody on the lower end of income. And this is just due to, wanting a full, full control, wanting to say, wanting the aspects, wanting to, um, make sure that their money is going where it needs to go. I mean, instead of having someone speak for them. So these are all typical patterns. Women tend to vote more of a Democrat. Men tend to vote more Republican. African Americans tend to vote more Democrat. Whites in general tend to vote more Republican, where Latinos tend to vote more Democrat. Asians also kind of go more Democrat. So you can kind of see how the two-party of presidential votes is kind of split in regards to this, and why sometimes having to count every single ballot it's crucial because everybody does count. Every vote does count. Every aspect does count. When you're looking at lobbying and the special interest groups, these individuals, lobbying is basically, or lobbyists, are people who influence legislations on behalf of their clients. They try to push, they try to do whatever they can. Um, Let me go back a minute. When you're looking at the voting patterns too, proportional representation, the proportional representation is basically it divides the seats in a legislature according to the proportion of votes received by each political party. And I'll repeat that. Proportional representation divides seats in a legislature according to the proportion of votes received by each political party. So when you look at that, it's one of those situations, each political party, how each get their votes, that's the proportional representation. So just like each state has has senates and stuff like that, or we have, Congress, we have certain people. So those are just the ones that have been voted into there. So that's the proportional representation. Going back to the lobbyist, these are more, like I said, individuals that influence legislations on behalf of their clients. They're looking for individuals to um, pay influence. Um, they want they're part of members of Congress. They must pay attention to what's being represented by voters who share their interests, the same propositions, all of that aspects, right? These are the lobbyists of interest. When you're looking at the special interest groups, these are groups of people who support a particular issue and who can be mobilized for the political action. So they're able to move around a little bit more to kind of go get all the aspects. But really, what they're doing, they're looking at the money in regards from a political action committee. These are called PACs. These are an organization formed by one or more special interest groups to solicit and spend funds for the purpose of influencing legislations. In Oh, I wanna say in each year, there's about 7,000 PACs, that are out and about. They shell out to close about a $500 million to the politicians. So when you're doing the math and you're looking at that number, you're talking 7,000 people, or 7,000 groups, not people, but 7,000 groups that are basically giving money of about a $500 million for the politicians. So those are your special interest groups. In order for them to get that, they have to be able to pull it in as well. So those are their financial interests. Those are your special groups such as banking, dairies, defense, all the industrial type of aspects. The Supreme Court opened a floodgate of bankrolls of politicians. So you had the Citizens United and the Federal Election Commissioners that had basically a court ruling that kind of went back and forth and that limited the amount of corporations that can contribute to the politicians. They're saying that it violated the First Amendment in regards to that. So there's now kind of a split in regards to it. So there's been an amendment that was done during that court. And now you have super PACs, which raise huge amounts for their preferred candidate. So whether the Democrat candidate or the Republican candidate. And that's how the presidentials kind of gain their aspects in regards to their money aspects. When you're looking at who rules the United States, you have the functionalist perspective, which is pluralism. And pluralism is basically, from a functionalist standpoint, is who should rule in society's favor. That's all it is. It's very simple, nothing special. It's the basic needs of a group. Pluralism uses checks and balances to prevent any one person from gaining control over the government. So they're looking at it from a standpoint from their perspective as who should rule in society, who favors, who has that right. That's usually why we have the checks and balances that we do have in place. When you're looking at the power elites, this is more from a power of the United States of the model proposed from Charles Wright Mills when we talked about the power elites back a few chapters. You can see these are your top, your corporations, your political, your military. These are your top, you know, most powerful, and you can kind of see it move all the way down to your least powerful. So you have middle levels, which is Congress, other legislators, your interest group leaders, your local um, opinion leaders, and then you have the mass of people, unorganized, exploited, and mostly uninterested. But as you get more people interested, this gets pushed down a little bit more, and then you end up with another tier. But this is from a power elite. This is a conflict perspective. But when you're looking at both views, which view is right? Its overwhelming evidence points to the wealthy and business groups being a major influence on the U.S. policies. When you're looking at that bigger picture and you're looking at the aspects in regards to all of that, it can kind of be a little unsettling in regards to knowing that how much you know, the wealthy and how much of the business groups really have a say in regards to our US policies, in regards to our politics, in regards to how do we function in life. You have this 1% of wealthy that's dictating in regards to how we're supposed to live our lives. That's just why it's very important for everybody to understand, like, get out there, don't be this and mostly uninterested group. Kind of step up and say, you know what, no, I'm more interested because I don't want to be, you know, by this top percent, small top percent of corporations, political and military kind of dictate what I'm going to do with my life. So we're going to kind of flip from politics to war and terrorism type aspects. When we're looking at why do countries go to war and terrorism in general. So why do countries go to war? There have been several studies in regards to why. But from sociologist Nicholas Timeshaft, it was in 1965, he identified three essential conditions for war. One was antagonistic situation. Two is basically culture traditions. And three is basically there's a fuel that heats up that antagonistic situation. And there's seven things underneath that fuel. One is power, which is dominating a weaker nation. Two is unity, um, uniting rival groups within their countries. Three is revenge. Four is prestige. Five is leaders. Six is ethnicity. And seven are beliefs. So these are the fuels that tie into that third, that kind of heats things up. However, if you want to say that we honor war and killing, but we do. I mean, if we look at the bigger picture, we, depending on what's going on, we do sometimes take for granted in regards to our wars. However, if we think about the individuals that are actually going to war, those are somebody's family members, may not be yours, may be yours. And unfortunately, there are lives that are being lost. So if you look at the bigger picture, if war wasn't in existence, then would some of the laws be put in place? Do we have some of the aspects? But then again, there's more that goes behind it. But the centrally of war and killing and the teaching of the histories and the honoring of the patriots who founded a country are two indications. A third of the display of the past weapons in parks and museums. Here's a picture um, in Vietnam that you're seeing the kids kind of playing on as basically park material. Um, a fourth is a monument that basically commemorates wars and battles, excuse me, and discarded weapons. You know, with its M48. Here's an army tank in Vietnam. Sometimes become children's playgrounds. If you look at this and you see kind of kids playing on it, they get in it, they get to do whatever. Um, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, this is now kind of like our junk kind of left behind. Granted, it's not that easy to get out if it's broken down or if it's been torn up or, whatever the case may be. But even still, it's kind of like one of those things like it's still kind of ours. But I think sometimes when we leave our material behind, it's also a reminder in regards to showing that authoritative, power type aspects. Like we've done it once, we could do it again. So I think it's kind of like supposed to be like a remembrance in regards to the aspects. Here are boy soldiers that are learning, how to be soldiers. These are boys, they are not men. They're actually younger than our guys that actually are able to go in to the military, but this is, the flesh of blood and war. I mean, this is what it is, right? This is in Uganda. These guys are, stepping up to be soldiers. Some of them doesn't look, older than 10. Every country is different in regards to their, war forces. So, according to Time Shaft, once again, there's three necessary conditions. First one was the antagonistic situation. Two was in regards to culture, and three were the fire that had the seven behind it. When we're looking at when we're looking at the countries or countries the reason why to go to war and that type of aspects. But I mean, if you look at what century was the steam engine even invented to even kind of get to this level to where it's showing here and what the kids are playing on. In order to do that, we had to invent something. Well, we had to invent the steam engine. That steam engine was invented in the 18th century. What century are we in now? you know Technology has increased over the years to make things a little bit easier in regards to going to war. So when we're looking at terrorism is just a little bit different in regards to what you kind of see um, as a threat or violence, right? So terrorism is the use of violence or threat of violence to produce fear in order to attain political objective. However, you also have suicide terrorists. You have um, different levels of terrorists. But however, when we're talking about terrorists, society has put this, excuse me, image in regards to our head and what a typical stereotypic terrorist should look like. So as I flip the screen, was a story in your Down to Earth that indicated a terrorist, right? Who are suicide terrorists? Testing your stereotype. This is a woman who is um, basically she's a suicide terrorist. Does she match your typical stereotype of a suicide terrorist? She's currently serving a 16 life sentence in her Israel prison for her involvement in the terrorist attack in Jerusalem. Um, but she doesn't fit that typical stereotype that has been drilled into our mind in regards to what a terrorist is supposed to look like. Um, So you could kind of look at it as the reason why someone is a suicide terrorist. You have one of the moral outrage, two, the ideology behind it, three, they share outrage and the ideology, and they have a fourth one, which is a group supports of this radical action in regards to deciding to think that they could go ahead and take that control. Um, you would think these individuals are not smart. They have very high IQs. They are very intellectual. They're very educated. They know exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it. They're very smart. Don't think they are. Beneath that, by all means, they completely get what they're doing. Um, and they have a purpose in regards to why they do it. So, like I said, they have those moral outrage. They have an ideology. They know what they want. They know they're going to go and do it. Um, they have shared outrage and ideologies with others. So there's the planning, there's the organizing. Who's the authoritarian of the group? Who knows? But at the same time, it's trying to put that all together in regards to one sense. So when we're looking at how we transform the economy system and we're looking at it, we have pre-industrial societies, the birth of inequality. We have industrial societies, which is the birth of machine. And that's like I said, that during what century was a steam engine invented, this kind of where this is falling into, the 18th century type aspects. Um, you have post-industrial societies. This is the birth of information age, and then you have biotech. So when you're looking at pre-industrial type aspects, pre-industrial, we had to hunt, we had to gather, for our food. These are hunting and gathering societies. Globally, do we still have hunting and gathering societies? Absolutely. These are your least industrial areas that have more of the population, more of the land type thing. So yes, they still hunt and gather. Um, you have the pastoral societies, and then you have the start of inequality. This is kind of where separation kind of started. So you have this um, subsistence economy, which is a type of economy in which human groups live off. Like I said, the land have little or no surplus. So I mean, not like us. I mean, we could go to the one store, see if we have what they, see they if they have what we need. If they don't, we just go to another store. A lot of places don't have that. A lot of places have one store. If the store doesn't have it, that's it. You don't have a surplus. You don't have this big variety of things, right? So this is kind of like the pre-industrial, the birth of inequality. This kind of separated all of the countries in regards to the most industrialized, industrializing, and least industrializing. Um, Remember, it's just for category purposes. It's not to actually put in there for depth or separation, but it's just the way how it's got categorized. Industrialized societies, the birth of machines, the machines. We have the steam engines, we have cars, we have all of that aspects that kind of developed throughout this time. Um, we have a service sector to a large that most people work in it. If you think about what type of work that we do, there's a vast surplus of goods. There's even more extensive trade among nations and a wider variety and quality of goods available to the average person. And then the fifth one is the information explosions, and the sixth is the interconnection global village. So we have our technologies, we have our able to communicate between societies. Back then, it was pick up the phone, communicate, right? This is that birth of technology, that birth of all of those aspects that kind of built into this phase, right? And then you have excuse me, all those I just gave you were for the post-industrial. My apologies for that. But the birth of machines, like I said, it's the conception. Um, it's the let me go back. Um, Consumptions in regards to the vast of the ethics showing off their wealth, that type of thing. Who could afford what. Sorry. And then when you're talking about the post-industrial societies, the birth of information, these are, like I said, all those sevens I just gave you. The service sectors are large to most of the people working at the vast surplus. Um, these are the six characteristics that kind of do that. And then when you look at the last one, this is kind of, you can kind of see the evolutionary change in regards to the post-industrialized. This is that revolutionary change in the United States workforce, where you have more white collar um, kind of going up, and you have your blue collar and your farming going down. Um, they did a prediction in regards to 2020 back in 2017, to kind of give that picture in regards to kind of like what it looked like. And I wouldn't say white collar is as high as it is, but I mean, I would say it's pretty high. But blue collar work is kind of, going away. It's still existent. Farming is kind of went away from the 1900s because we don't gather our food and we don't do that hunting anymore. So farming kind of has anticipated down to where not a lot of people want to be farmers. But this is kind of like where people want to do for work. Do you want to be in an office, be that boss type aspects? That's that line that's going up. Biotech societies, the merge of biology and economics kind of pulled in all together. Based on the advantages in biology and human geosystems, um, people are looking at in regards to, does the biology in our human DNA kind of have a advanced type aspects, right? So they look at it through a aspects of, can some people have this healthier, live longer, you know, if you are considered the wealthier, or if you have the better insurance, or if you're middle class versus poverty versus upper, all of those things have that emerge in regards to the human geosystem. But it's also going to dictate whether the living the longer, healthier lives. If you're somebody who's in um, poverty stricken, type aspects to where, you have no medical insurance, or that type of aspects, if you don't have the medical insurance to help you live healthier lives or live longer, then that's really not going to help you in regards to those biotech aspects. um, so that's kind of like what they're talking about, because we have that extensive trade, we have all of those you know advances in regards to biology to help us as a human to be able to live a little bit longer. When we're looking at a world economic system, we're looking at capitalist, socialism, ideals of capitalism and socialism, and the criticisms on both. When you're looking at capitalism, these are private ownerships, the means of production, market competition, pursuit of profit, right? It's just the way how this is just straight capitalism. They look at, individuals who own land, machines, factories. That's that means of production. Going back to that phrase, or back to that saying, when we learn back from like chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, means of production, the ones who own the land, machines, and factories. Two, when you're looking at market competition, these are competing for one another, own decisions. They decide you know, what to do, produce, what they do to set the prices, um, what they do for the products. That's that market competition. And then when you look at for pursuit of profit, this is the owners. They will try to sell their products for more than actually what they cost. So this is where you could really have the competition in regards to, you could kind of use gas prices for an example. I mean, you could drive down Bear Valley and not one of them has a set price exactly the same as the other. Those are those different type of ownerships in regards to, what they could charge and all that aspects. Competing, market competition. When you're looking at the state of capitalism, they look at it as more of a development of state capitalism. Um, they don't want to look at it. Well, when you're looking at capitalism, there's different type of aspects. You got, developing the state of capitalism. You have the laissez-faire of capitalism. So you kind of have this aspect. So you either have one that's really on it, or you have one that's really hands off. The laissez-faire of capitalism is a hands-off, meaning that the government doesn't interfere with the market. It's just straight as it is. So it's that state capitalism type aspects. But when you're looking at the comparing the two between capitalism and socialism, socialism was going to be looking at more of the public produces the means of production. Central committees plan and produce a set price on the competition, and there's no profit motive in the distribution of goods and services. Um, One of the important features of socialism is that it eliminates the competition. That's the one aspect in regards to it. It eliminates the competition so that way you don't have um, the competitiveness in regards to the prices, and you don't go to 15 different stores that have 15 different prices and you try to shop for the cheapest one. It's just one of those situations. That's kind of how they interpreted socialism, is that it just eliminates the competition. However, when you're looking at capitalism, this is an advertisement from 1885 that represents an early stage of capitalism when individuals were free to manufacture and market production with little or no interference from the government. Today, the production and marketing of goods take under place in regards to detail, compliance, government laws and regulations, and this was considered an iron tonic. Now we have the FDA to make sure that we're not getting medication that's going to harm us even more. So that's kind of like that government taking control type aspects. But here, this is an iron tonic. This was, Dr. Hader's the original iron tonic. It cures female disease, purifies the blood. It's just basically iron. That's all it was. Um, for those of you who are, maybe being anemic or having to take iron supplements, this is your iron supplement here. But the way how they make it sound is like, oh, it purifies your blood. So it's just kind of a little bit of a false marketing in regards to the aspects. When you're looking at socialism together, what it is socialism, like I mentioned. Sorry about that for all the barking, by the way. What socialism is, it's publicly owned ownership, the means of production, central planning, distribution of goods without profit motive. Socialism is a practice, and it's a democrat socialism. So it's kind of that's why I said it eliminates that competition of things. Ideologies of capitalism and socialism. So each perceives the other system as one of exploitation. Capitalist thinks socialist violates people's basic rights to make their own decisions and produce opportunities, and socialist thinks a capitalist violates people's basic rights to be free from poverty. So you can kind of see the ideologies from both sides, and this is kind of where we teeter totter within a society as well. U.S. actually runs off of both. I know that's been one of the biggest things that you hear right now. Oh, US is we going to become a socialism and da 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 da. No. Right now, us actually runs as both, plain as day. We are a capitalist, country, and we are a socialist country. That's just the way how it works. People have the freedom to do whatever they want. Um, Depending on what type you do for work, you might have government involvement a little bit more, But however, if you think about any company that is out there right here, right now, you have laws that you have to follow. So, regardless, you have the government involved because you have to follow those certain laws if you own a business. Critiques capitalism leads to social inequality. Socialism does not respect individuals' rights. So you can kind of see how the critiques kind of go back and forth. And you can go back and forth and you can hear these totters, you can hear the arguments go on all the time. But at the same time, you end up with these propagandas that kind of end up that kind of try to influence public opinions that surround us. Most propaganda is converted, difficult to recognize during the economic political conflicts such as World War II. There was a lot of propaganda moves into that were moved into the open. This was the anti-allies. This was a British, American, Russian coalition. This is a poster that's showing you from Germany. It reads, "Behind the fetish, the enemy is the Jew." So you can kind of see how you could kind of take the capitalists and socialists and kind of how they're kind of teeter tottering between the two, propaganda this way. But, even yet you have an anti-Japanese poster on the right, here from the United States during the same era, this is the enemy showing a Japanese, individual with, basically flames them as like devils. You have the Americans running, Japanese person holding a woman who's naked and carrying her. So you can kind of see how propaganda could kind of influence in regards to the decisions, in regards to how we act, how towards the others, and that type of aspects. So there's a lot that kind of goes on in regards to this. When you're looking at conversion theories of capitalist and socialist, conversion theories is basically it takes the view that capitalist and socialist economic systems in adopting features from one another that will create a mixed economic system. This is kind of where a lot of countries are kind of going. They kind of mix max. They want to take the capitalist, they want to take the socialist economic systems, and they want to adopt from each of them and kind of mix it. This helps that transmerge as well. But when you're looking at the transmerging theory, this is a little bit different. When you're looking at the transmerging theory, you're looking at kind of more of this. You want to transmerge into a better economic system that kind of has all the best things that you want to embrace. They want to, take all those aspects. So when you're looking at this is China has embraced its own version of capitalism, wealth, and has growth. China is now moving into the next phase of capitalism, with the emphasis of changing from production to consumption. This is a shopping mall in Shanghai. This costs about $50 million. I think they're trying to replicate it. Excuse me. They're trying to replicate this mall in Beijing, and it's costing about $50 million to kind of build it to kind of match it. But they're kind of rolling it over to kind of like you know show the mix in regards to that convergence type aspects. Like everybody has a right, everybody has this, everybody has that. But it's also one of those capitalisms. Like, well, maybe if you shop here, you show that you have a little bit higher of an interest. I'm sure this store here might be Michael's Kors. Not 100% sure. You can only see a portion of it. Um, but I mean, as you can see, I mean, there's still elevator going down. You have elevators going up. So as of right now, you see one, two, three, 4 floors, and probably going down. So maybe this is a 5 floor shopping mall versus our lovely high desert one. So you can kind of see the difference in regards to the way how capitalism and socialism kind of converge together. I would love to see our mall more developed, more, to fit our needs instead of having a handful of stores, maybe expand 2-story or, that type of thing, to kind of fit kind of everybody's needs and not just a specific type of aspects. When you're looking at globalism of capitalism, you have a new global structure and its effects on workers. You have a um, stagnant paychecks in the new economic system and the old division. So when you're looking at the aspects of the new global structures and its effects on workers, a new world structure and global production and distribution, how does it look? What does it look like? Your book, you have great examples in regards to pictures of some areas that are not a global structure that they're the old fashioned, the application of free trade is there, that's fine. But some of the places look like they've been there for years and years and years. Little rundown, that type of aspects. That's fine. That's what works for them. However, now if you look at some of the bigger areas, what does it look like for buildings? I mean, those buildings are not the same. Um, and average hourly earnings of workers in current and consistent dollars when we're looking at this is from 1970 to 2017. Your orange is your current dollars, your purple is your consistent dollars. When you look at the average of global US workers, your purple is your consistent dollars. As you can see, it stayed pretty low. Your current dollars were increasing. So things are worth more, things are costing more. It takes more to spend. Um, However, when you're taking this average and your minimum wage is here, it makes it harder to be anything competitive up here. You can't buy the wealthier things. You can't have the what the capitalists have type aspects. So that's kind of where that consistency of the dollar kind of adjusted an inflation type thing. That's reason why now minimum wage is going to be $15. Okay, well, is that $15 across US or is that just California? Think about it that way. Yeah, we may be 15 bucks, but you could have somebody in Kansas that's only making 8. There's a big difference. You might have somebody in, you know, uh, Tennessee that might be making 7. So you can see how this average could kind of stay consistent, to where it's not going across. So our minimum wage rates, US globally wise, is not the same as everywhere else. However, this economic side of things too is what changes too. So I mean, you've all seen gas prices and all that good stuff. I mean, if you left California and gone to Arizona, you know there's almost a dollar difference in gas prices. Um, you go a little bit further, you might get a little bit less. However, if you go to Florida, you might see the same prices. It's one of those situations to where the consistency is not the same. That's the reason why it's so high. When you look at the inverted income pyramid, the proportion of income received by each fifth of the population, so you can kind of see this is the top, this is the mid tier, and this is the bottom. So you can kind of see the divisions in regards to it all. And then you have a global superclass. This is the concentration of the wealthy and powerful individuals. They have the connections to the top circle of political power. These are like part of your power elites, right? They work behind the scene of the political scene and the impact of the present of the future. When you're looking at this, these are the ones that are wealthy that you just don't see. So I'm going to say Bill Gates is one of them. You know, Oprah Winfrey is one of them. They're behind the scenes. They're very wealthy and they're very powerful individuals. They have the connections to the top circle of the political power. They work behind the political scenes. You don't see them. They're not in the frontline lights, but they have a say in regards to it. So they consider themselves like part of a superclass. So that has a lot to do with it as well. What lies ahead? You know, in our new world order, you know, do we have unity? Do we have disunity? We're going to have changes regardless. You know, that's just what's going to happen. Right now, we kinda have a little bit of a disunity going on. Eventually, we'll get to unity status again. Um, you know, it's just one of those things. But you know, this is globalization. We want things to kind of work. So these are kind of like the two scenarios in regards to it. The extreme possibilities that the First Nations overcomes the rivalries and tension and folds themselves into a larger economic political alignments, right? Um, and then you have a second that, you know, rivalries, you know, old wounds produce increased unity. So it really depends, but it takes worldwide for everybody kind of survive. It takes the US with the other countries with the US. That's kind of how we were able to have our vast surplus. It's the way how we communicate, it's the way how we do. So it's either we're going to have unity or if we're going to have disunity. If we have more disunity, you know, expect the economy side for us to go up because now it's not going to be such a vast surplus. Change are going to happen, like I said, regardless. That's just the way how it goes. So you have this dominance or the particular nations. You have the group nations. You have the cultural ways. You have it. It's all going to change. It really just depends in regards to kind of what way you want to go with it, how you want to interpret it, and how you want to flow with things. I guess you more or less want to look at the bigger picture. But that takes care of chapter 11. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a good one.